Good morning and welcome to the SitRep for the 8th of April 2022. Still kicking. We're still going. On a roll, in fact. I hope you're all well and healthy. This Friday morning in Australia, it's currently 8:13 Australian Eastern Standard Time. A lot of stuff popped up in the news last night. So for those who haven't joined me on one of these sit reps before, essentially what I do is pour over news stuff that comes into me over the past 24 hours. I did a sit rep last night, so over the past 12 hours. And things that pop out as interesting to me, I like to then pass on to you. So you're not having to necessarily pour through all the news channel, mainstream media or propaganda networks that I do. You can get my take on things. And then I look at these stories from the perspective of what this is going to affect in our lives now and the sort of things that we might want to start thinking about or doing as far as prepping goes. So preparing for a world that we're moving into that might be a little bit more difficult than the one we currently live in, although it is rapidly getting difficult. All right, so today, start off with some stuff around finance. There is going to be a new world disorder. We're talking about the price of gold in relation to US dollars. So it's more about US dollars than anything else. Is gold, I've mentioned this before, is gold actually moving? Is it going up? Everyone's talking about how gold's going up in price. It's at now sitting above that $1,900 US dollars an ounce mark pretty stubbornly. And it looks like it's going to kind of, maybe settle for a little bit in between. Well, I think it's at 1930 or 35 this morning. Probably going to settle in that area for a little bit. But what this story is saying that it could shoot up in price. The thing is, gold isn't necessarily shooting up in price. What is happening is the US dollar is devaluing very quickly. And this story was basically saying, this one I got from Zero Hedge, and that quote was from Von Greyers. Essentially what it's saying is that the US dollar has been devalued since 1971 about 95 to 98%. But it's still got further to go. It's still got another 2% to go, which might seem like a little bit, but that little 2% is 100% of what we have right now of the US dollar. So once it slips over the next 2 years, they're saying 2 to 5 years, it'll slip that last little bit and disappear off into obscurity and become redundant, extinct, an extinct currency. That's what they're predicting, which will be fun. Shocking consumer credit numbers. Credit card debt soars with savings long gone. So one of the effects of many, many different things that are happening in the world at the moment, but one of the big ones was the COVID lockdowns and restrictions, which forced a lot of people out of the workplace temporarily, but forced people who were already kind of on that borderline and maybe had a little bit of savings left to utilize that savings. So the amount of savings that many countries, this one I think is focused around the US, but many countries had as a total from individuals has been depleted. And so now people are diving into debt, credit card debt. They're using credit cards more and more to just get by. And we've seen a nice little uptick in debt. So when we're talking about debt crisis, quite often we're talking about the country's debt crisis. Not necessarily factoring in individual consumer credit or debt. That's what this is saying, that this is actually also shooting up as well. So we're seeing the conflagration of many different debt cycles at the moment. From the financial perspective, what we're starting to look at is obviously increased instability in the financial market. And that's apparent when we look at the financial markets and how quickly they move up and down at the moment based on what is kind of arbitrary news or news that probably shouldn't necessarily knock the markets around as much as they do. And even today, there's some crazy stuff going on. The uninversion of the yield curve that I was talking about, the dip coming in, exciting people to buy. It's a very fragile time for the markets right now. And who knows where this is going to go. Well, I think people know where it's going to go. It's pretty obvious where it's going to go. Not anywhere good anytime soon. All right, a little bit on the commodity side of things. So I think what we're actually heading into as far as financial sort of stuff goes, we can look at this as a good or a bad thing. Certainly if you're deep into the financial market and you want the current system to continue going the way it's going, I think you might be in for a bit of disappointment. But if if you kind of know how these things work, it's not usually that everything goes down all at once. Some things go down, some things go up, and so there's this balancing act. I think a lot of people start moving into actual solid commodities nowadays as we're moving on, and especially things to do with energy. We're having a food crisis, we're having an energy crisis, so things to do with land, food, fuel, things that create energy, coal, oil, natural gas, all this sort of stuff. We're seeing that up at the moment, and we'll probably see that up for a little bit. Russia's April oil output drops most in 2 years, even as cargoes of Far East Sokol crude sell out. So we're seeing the output of oil drop from Russia, but we're also seeing crude oil sell out, a different part of the crude oil industry sell out. Russia's just shifted their oil output now to China, and so that's where a lot of it's going to be going, I think, in the future. That's going to buoy up that market. So crude oil, I think, even though it's discounted from Russian perspective, it's still going to be increased across the world, because we're having to see what will start happening is energy that was going short distances will now have to go long distance or more convoluted distances, because these people aren't buying from these people, and these people aren't going to buy from these people. So we're seeing that move around. That's going to drive up prices of things like oil and coal. Coal miners surge after Europe backs Russian coal embargo. So Europe has said, no, we're not going to take your coal now as well. That one I thought was interesting. It was kind of kept on the back burner. Everyone was focusing on oil prices, and I was like, what about all the other stuff that comes out of Russia? Why isn't there a big hoo-ha about the embargoes on these? Turns out there was no embargo on them. They weren't sanctioning some of these things, but now they're going to. I'm not from my perspective, it looks like Europe is increasingly choking themselves out when it comes to these sanctions. They don't fully, it seems that every sanction they put on hurts them more, and they just keep going down that path. And the fallout from that, I'll talk about a little later, but it's displeasing the local population in Europe. So this is pretty much, so Europe's come out and said, we're going to back Russian coal embargo. That's shot the coal miners, the companies shot their stocks up, and it's pretty much locked in that coal will increase in price. So if you're a country like Australia who exports coal, yay, there's going to be some coal mining operations that are going to be making a lot of money in the next little bit. On top of this, EU coal hunt as Russia ban looms. So on top of that, the European Union has gone, we're going to ban this coal, and now they've gone, oh, let's start looking for coal. We've got to look for coal. I would have thought that maybe you would have done that before you start throwing out sanctions like that. That's just me. Secure things like electricity and, keeping the lights on and keeping your people, fed and warm. That's probably what I would have done. But, you do you, Europe. So what they're going to do is they're going to increase taking on coal from the US, Colombia, Australia, and South Africa. But Australia and Indonesia have already hit production limits. That's interesting, right? So they're saying they're going to increase from 0 in Australia to about 537,000 tonnes. So what they're essentially doing is saying, hey, Australia, we need you to up your production by 537 tons in the next, I don't know, 2 weeks. How quickly can that be done? It's going to take a fair amount of time for that to actually get up and running. So let's see how that goes. In the meantime, I guess people in Europe can just wear a sweater. Put another sweater on. Buy some more wool from New Zealand, I guess. Put your woolies on, Europe. It's going to get cold. Luckily, they're coming into summer. Yeah, so I mean, this is going to have a big effect on the whole coal market now. So again, we're looking at market pressures happening here, supply and demand on a mass scale. Have a think about this. If the price of oil and natural gas and coal is going up and people still want it, so there's still demand for it, the price is increased, then supply is actually going to have to increase as well to catch up. And all this is generating more movement in this entire sector. So what do you think that's going to do to renewable energies? Yeah, there will be an overflow here that will go into renewable energies, and people will start going like, shit, we can't keep relying on this stuff. We have to put into renewable energies. But if coal miners are getting more money for coal, then it's encouraging them to dig more coal, which reinforces this system, the fossil fuel system. So again, this is another like big knife in the back to the whole renewable energy sector. The whole idea that we can power the world on renewable energy is taking another blow. Unless we get some leaders in there who start thinking very, very differently to the current ones that we have. But we seem to be going the opposite way at this stage. All right. So moving on to stuff that's happening in the Europe and the Ukraine-Russian sort of conflict that's happening at the moment. I'm not really going to talk on the conflict too much. There is some stuff that's coming out about there, but there's too much and it's changing day by day. But this one was interesting, I thought. Russia's been suspended from the UN Human Rights Council, so they have taken a vote on that. 93 votes. It was a US proposed resolution, surprise, surprise. 93 votes said yes, 24 opposed, and 58 abstained from voting. I mean, it's pretty normal for the UN to abstain, or countries to abstain from votes, but I think it's pretty interesting that you got 93 for and then 58 who just don't want to talk about it. Because this is kind of backed off this whole event that's happened where they're claiming that Russia has, not genocide, but caused a mass kill of civilian population in Bucha. So that's not backed up. Like they've sent people in to try and verify this. There's been no verification of it. So I think it's interesting that on the back of that, which is essentially at this point rumor and innuendo, I'm not saying they did do it or they didn't do it, but it hasn't been confirmed that they did it. On the back of that, they're kicking them out of the UN Human Rights Council. And the response for that, UN risks devastating consequences for itself. So that's from the Russian side. So this is Russian propaganda side. This is what they've said. And if you've ever listened to me before, you would know that I like to try and get information from all different sources, or as many different sources that I can, even though they are overtly Russian propaganda or overtly Western propaganda, or wherever it's coming from. And I think I like a diversity of ideas, and I like a diversity of opinions and a diversity of viewpoints coming into something. When we're doing things like expelling en masse Russian ambassadors because they're Russian, when we're doing things like kicking them out of the UN, what we're doing is segregating that portion, and even from an individual standpoint and in a psychological standpoint, anytime we try and segregate a part of ourselves and not look at it, it ends up coming back to bite us on the arse invariably. So I can't see this ending well. I can't see us pushing Russia more and more into a corner and more out of other systems that we have working out well. I can only see this increasing tensions and increasing hostilities and increasing the chance that something majorly catastrophic would happen. All right, where was I up to after that little rant? Back in our neck of the woods, China, what are they doing? China accuses Orcus, I hate this name. I can't, like, AUKUS. It's the Australian, UK, and the US military tie-in. Orcus. It just, I don't know, it's like an awkward Dorcas or something. Orcus. They could have thought of a better name, surely, for this. Anyway, China accuses Orcus of attempting an Asia-Pacific version of Nato. Yeah, no shit. Also the Quad, which is US, Australia, India, and Japan. China came out and accused them of trying to be a NATO as well. And this is exactly what it is. We're trying to form a NATO because we're pretty worried about China rising in power as it is and what it's doing around in this area. So more rhetoric that we're seeing out of China, which is very anti-US, which is more stay in your own lane, US, get out of our area. And one of the things that we're seeing with this is when they're using this kind of languaging, this rhetoric about NATO, you should understand, is something that is built around the Cold War. So what they're doing is likening this to the Cold War. And what we're almost having is resurgence of Russian aggression, being Cold War Part 2 or maybe 0.5 or Mark B or something like that. Plus China now in getting involved as well. So it's this two-front Cold War that's happening, that's starting to build up. Yeah, and they're pretty worried about it. I mean, China's pretty worried about it. We're pretty worried about China, clearly, by everything that we're doing at the moment to do with our defense. It's blatantly obvious. So, I mean, this is rapidly heading into that area, that space of conflict. I think that's probably where it's going to head into. Moscow blacklists 228 Australian citizens. Are you on the list? Well, guess who is on the list? Scott Morrison. Bam, you're on the list, buddy. Foreign and Defence Minister, you're on the list too. They also blacklisted 130 New Zealand citizens, including Jacinta. Auntie Jacinta. You're naughty, you're not going to Russia anytime soon. So, yeah, Moscow, I don't know what it's worth to them, but it's more kind of saber-rattling type stuff. They're essentially looking at all the countries that are unfriendly to them, and they're being unfriendly back to them. So that's what we're doing. I just thought that was interesting that they came and released that. They let the world know that Australia and New Zealand, we're on the naughty list as far as they are concerned. Yay us. Okay, a bit of cyber stuff now. Anonymous claim nearly 1 million Russian state media emails leaked. So, Anonymous, the hacking organization, apparently hacked into VGTRK, which is a Russian state media organization channel, and they have got almost 900,000 emails from the television and radio broadcasting company from 20 years ago. So from today to 20 years ago, or whenever they did this attack. There's about 786 gig of data in there. So, and they're releasing it apparently, or have released it. I think they're trying to say they've claimed responsibility for it as well. So why is this important to us? Think about all the stuff that you've done on the internet for the last 20 years. Even the stuff you've tried to delete. It's not deleted. It's somewhere. It's sitting somewhere on a server. It just always makes me think. It's like, think about what you put out there on the internet. Like, I'm sure that one day I'll be doing something and somebody will dig up one of these videos and go like, ha, bang, here's a soundbite of you saying this. Just be cognizant of what you're doing on the internet at any given time. There are things that you might not want to put out there. Things that can be dredged up even 20 years later. So I mean, that's 2002 that they're dredging this stuff up from. Not that I think they'll care that much. They're a Russian state media. I mean, it depends on what comes out from these, I guess. But that's a lot of emails for people to start pouring through. So I'm sure there'll be some interns in, especially in some Western media organizations, who will have some sleepless nights over the next couple of months pouring through thousands and thousands of emails trying to find some juicy gossip that's coming out here. But yeah, beware of what you do online. It never goes away. Okay, so I was talking about the situation in Europe starting to look a bit dire. I touched on this last night with the food crisis sort of stuff. I was talking a lot about food crisis sort of stuff last night, actually, and probably will again today. Thousands of Greeks decry soaring prices and low wages. So Greeks having riots or protests, that's nothing new. They've been doing it for a little while now. And if you cast your mind back to 2008, 2010, the austerity measures that Greece brought in against their people were very much fought against in that form of riots. And it looks like they're heading that way again. But, I'm putting up this one as an example, but there's been many, many examples of this throughout Europe, and we'll start to see them throughout other countries as well. We have seen them throughout other countries, Sri Lanka being probably primary of them. This is where we're heading into this protest riot kind of cycle now. You increase price of living, you decrease supply of food or increase the cost of food, and one thing that hasn't quite caught up yet is wages. I don't know about you, my wages certainly haven't gone up. It's a joke. I don't really have wages. But anyway, wages aren't catching up with inflation, and especially not at the point of sale inflation that we're seeing at the moment, the rate of it at the moment, which is at the fuel pump, which is at the supermarket. There's official inflation data, which is one thing, but there's actually what you're paying for a basket full of goods right now at a supermarket. And there's a disparity that's growing more and more each day. That's going to cause a lot of pain in the world. We're going to see more of these riots and more of these problems cropping up throughout the world. Relentless weather continues to pound the US as a huge storm produces a blizzard and widespread severe weather next week. Also, right here, where I am in Australia on the East Coast, we are getting, surprise, surprise, more rain. It feels like it's never ending right now. There's some like small, I wouldn't call it like, where we usually had puddles, there's now pools of water just around my house. I'm certainly not flooded in or anything, but there are parts of the east coast of Australia that are flooded, and we'll continue to get rain over the next 3 to 4 days at least. So yeah, we're getting hit by a lot of crazy weather here. US is getting smacked with a lot of freaking huge storms at the moment, and if you haven't been keeping track of their tornadoes this year, it's been quite intense. These ones what they're talking about here is an expansive, multifaceted storm system, which stretches all the way from the Rockies to the Great Plains. These are huge, and I've spoken about this before. It's my belief that weather events are going to be more intense and more frequent as we go along, and we have to start preparing ourselves for these sorts of things. So start to think about this. Do you have what you need in your house to protect yourself from a storm? Also, do you have what you need packed and ready to go in case you need to bug out, in case you need to get out of your house right now? So think about that. Think about having some stuff stored, maybe even in your car, prepped, ready to go. Have a look around your house, do a little audit, go, okay, if we needed to leave right now because the floodwaters, we got a floodwater warning and an evacuation order, do I have what I need listed out that I can quickly grab, throw in the car, and head off? So you don't forget little things like, power and food and, I don't know, your children. Make sure that you got all that stuff sort of organized and ready to go. Don't leave it up until that point where you're, freaking out and under pressure to do these sorts of things. And if you want to learn more about any of this stuff, then join me on Sunday up in Sydney if it's not raining too much. No, we're indoors on Sunday. So Sunday from 10 till 4, I'll be doing a course on disaster and emergency survival type stuff, where I'll be talking about things like grab bags and what you might want to have in them. And we can discuss this stuff human to human, face to face. More on the weather sort of stuff. South America crops in poor conditions, yield trending down. This is on top of, so we're seeing South America now, so this is coming out of Brazil, Argentina area. We're seeing this news come out of almost every major breadbasket. And by breadbasket, I mean areas that grow large amounts of crops that feed huge amounts of people. We're seeing it in almost every breadbasket across the world now, this sort of news coming through. That the changing weather conditions that we're experiencing are affecting our food supply, our ability to grow food. On top of that, drought in the wheat growing areas of the USA has latest USDA winter wheat crop conditions estimated at worst in 10 years. China also claims that their wheat is the worst on record. And of course, Ukraine and Russia is not exporting any of theirs. So multiple things that are happening here. There's so many factors that go into creating all the food that the world eats that any one of them could disrupt the food sufficiently to cause a huge famine in parts of the world. The thing is, we're not seeing just any one of those systems. We're seeing almost all of those systems fail or be disrupted simultaneously all across the world. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. Grow your own food now. Start growing your own food now. And store some food. Buy up some food and store it up. Retailers in the US have been... they put a poll out for retailers, being farm retailers in the US, who buy up things like fertilizer and farm equipment and all sorts of other stuff. And they found that in February, 52% of retailers reported that they had supply chain issues which will impact their food production. That was in February, 52%. That's now, 2 months later, that is now at 87%. Are reporting that they've got issues that are going to impact their food production. This is causing yet another thing that is causing, especially like the USDA, they're looking at their report and how much they're going to put out. They're continually downgrading that. They're going, okay, we're going to have less. We're going to have less. And these things always go up and down, but usually it's kind of like a shortfall this year, so we can export less and we'll buy in some from China or buy in some from Russia or whatever. We're not having that anymore. What we're moving into now is a system where countries will just wholesale stop exporting. We've already seen that. A couple of countries have come out and said, we're not exporting any of our crops this year. It's just not going to happen, guys. You're not getting any of it. We need it. Isolationism is what's happened. We've had a period of expansion and globalization where we've interconnected everything that we're doing across the world. And now, very rapidly, that is unwinding, and the rubber bands that we've been placing out in the world are slapping us back in the face. So this is what we're going to start seeing. We're going to start seeing countries pull in, pull into themselves, pull their resources unto themselves, and stop exporting things like food. But again, in Australia, I think we still sit in a pretty good position according to this. In respect to this sort of stuff, our food production will go down, mainly due to things like fertilizer being one factor of it, but I think mainly due to the weather that we've had this year. But even then, we've had pretty bumper crops before we started getting the floods here. So yeah, I mean, a lot of doom and gloom out there. What else have we got in the mainstream media? Nothing interesting. No. Yeah, same old, really. A lot of different factors that are coming in at us right now, but again, I just want to reiterate that what we do as individuals, as human beings, is continue just to forge ahead. We still have the food on the shelves at the moment in Australia. There hasn't been any panic buying. There hasn't been any like crazy, insane increases in prices for food. There has been increases in prices in food in Australia, yes, but not to the point that it's going to totally bankrupt you if you go to the shops. So we still have the opportunity now to set ourselves up, and I encourage you to do that. So continue to set yourself up in the best way that you can, whatever that looks like for you. Continue to just get a little bit more stored food or shelf-stable food stored away, and really, really concentrate on getting gardens up and running, creating your own food source, building that resiliency within your own life. So keep doing that. I think as Australians, hello dog, how are you? Did you hear me mention food and you were like, I would like some of that? Yeah, keep forging ahead with this sort of stuff. Keep making connections. Keep reaching out to people in your community and trying to build more of a community spirit around you, because it's that sort of thing that's going to increase your long-term survival chances if things get bad. But if things don't get bad, if things actually turn around and get good, then you've got a community around you. You've got people around you. You can still build these support networks. So it's irregardless of what happens in the world. And that's really what I try and encourage, is that we try and build our lives so it doesn't matter so much what happens over the other side of the earth when Russia invades Ukraine or China invades Taiwan or US dollar collapses. We can look at that news and go, yeah, that's pretty bad. Anyway, I'm just going to go get some cabbages out of the garden that I can swap for some deer meat that old mate shot the other day, and blah, 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 blah. This is the life that I think we should start moving towards. Self-reliance, community-based thinking. All right, so I'll wrap it up there. That's it for today. If you've got any questions, as always, please send them through to me. Tomorrow morning, I will be driving up to Sydney for the Free at the Sea Festival to chat there. So that starts at 1 p.m. in Bondi. Yep, in Bondi. Sorry, just got a message come in. A great gardening channel that is useful for tutorials and learning is The Weedy Garden. He mapped his journey growing enough food to eat his body weight in food from his garden. That's awesome. Thanks, Ryan. If anyone else has anything that you ever want to chuck into the chat there, please feel free to. I'll usually try and read it out, unless it whips past me and I miss it. That sometimes happens. Or if I'm on a rant, sometimes I miss what's going on. Yeah. Stay safe, guys. Keep prepping. If you're up in Sydney, come and see me at the festival tomorrow. Even come along on Sunday to the course. I would love to see y'all. Shake your hand. I don't know. Slap you on the shoulder or something. Like touch another human being and connect and actually talk, not through this medium of the interwebs. I think that'd be really cool. Anyway. Hopefully it's not raining too heavily where you are in the world. Stay safe, guys, and Semper Paratus.